Mhm. Okay, I think we're good. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours with Dr. Tamerisa. Today we have Dev Patel here. Hi, Dev. How are you?
Good.
Good. So May is Celiac Awareness Month, and we thought we would talk a little bit about celiac disease and some of the important points about it. So one of the statistics on it is that it's prevalent at a rate of about 1 in 100 people who are diagnosed with celiac disease. So it's quite common, and probably more common than we originally thought. And it really based on kind of when you get the diagnosis, it can be challenging to make such significant changes in the diet. And Dave is now, how old are you, Dave? 20?
About to be, yeah.
About to be 20, and you were diagnosed at what age?
I was in 3rd grade, so I want to say like 10 or 11, I think.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's been a while.
Probably a little bit younger. I think you were about 7 or 8 years old, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. So can you tell us a little bit about your experience with celiac and the diagnosis and kind of how you felt when you first found out about it?
Okay, so at first it wasn't like it was pretty hard at first because in the very beginning there was nothing out. Like it was just home food for the most part. Like going out to eat was a struggle and like all that stuff. But over time it's gotten like much better, like drastically. Like now, like before there weren't like anything in grocery stores. Now there's like aisles dedicated to gluten-free stuff, and like they have whole sections. But like in the beginning it was even hard to like find bread and stuff. But like now you can get almost anything you need. And then like normal food doesn't really have wheat in it. So like eggs and stuff, like normal like daily foods you can still eat. So I don't know. Like in the beginning it was rough, but you learn to work around it, I guess, just over time because you figure out what's there, what's not. And then I mean now there's substitutes for a lot of stuff. Like you can even make cakes and stuff because they have flour and all that. So I mean it's almost like how it is, just tastes a little different and it's healthier, so not too bad.
Yeah, good. Do you remember, can you go back and think about when you were first diagnosed? Do you remember how you were feeling or any of the symptoms that maybe made us think about celiac?
So in the beginning, like I would just eat normal like home food like everyone else, and then like I just get stomach pain at night, and it was really like uncomfortable to even like sleep or lay down. So like couldn't really do much. So like, and I guess we didn't know because I kept eating the same thing every day, and then I guess over time it just kind of got worse. I guess the pain started like growing a little bit more, and that's when like it got to a point where like I had to go because it just hurt so bad. So then we went and what did we do? I don't remember exactly what happened, but yeah, I was just having like super bad stomach pain after dinner one day. So then they rushed me to the ER, and then it started to settle down like 3 hours later. It was bad. It was like one of the worst pain. But then like slowly enough we started going to a hospital more, and they started running tests, and then like soon enough I guess they found out it was celiac. So yeah, I guess that's kind of how it went down.
Yeah. So of course, abdominal pain, and you probably don't remember, but you were very anemic too. Your
Oh yeah, I was eating a lot of ice. Yeah, that was very interesting.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. And you were young, you were 7 years old, so you don't
Mhm.
remember some of these details, but you also were not growing like some of your peers. You were a little bit shorter, you were a little
Yeah.
thinner, you weren't gaining weight as much.
Yeah. Yeah.
So those are some of the signs that you were not absorbing nutrients very well. And your blood count was actually half of what a normal blood count should be because you weren't able to absorb the iron that you were getting in your food.
Oh, I didn't even know that. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so I think the initial tip off was that you were eating a lot of ice. You just kept going to the refrigerator and getting more ice to chew. And so
Yeah.
knew that something wasn't right. And when we checked your blood count, that was extremely low. And it really, kind of took us on a path of making the diagnosis.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I do remember, like, in elementary school, in the beginning, I used to have to go to the nurse's office and take iron medicine, like during lunch and stuff with orange juice. That was like the very initial stages. Yeah.
Right. So a lot of the time the symptoms can be abdominal pain, change in bowel movement, sometimes diarrhea because you're not absorbing your nutrients very well, although we can see constipation as well. And fatigue, is a common trigger. Yeah, but I mean, if you kind of notice that, you're more fatigued or maybe not participating in certain activities as you normally do. And I remember that you weren't playing sports like you would normally have done.
Yeah.
And so those are kind of the clues that there's something that just doesn't feel right. So the diagnosis, Paula, the diagnosis can be made by a couple of different tests, and initially blood tests are really helpful because if we do pick up on things like anemia, for example, that can be really helpful. The other test is actually a blood test that looks for the markers for celiac. And if they're positive, they can be really useful. However, if they're negative, which can happen sometimes, you can't totally base your diagnosis on that. So the gold standard test for it is an endoscopy. That's where we take a look at the small intestine from the inside and then take some biopsies or samples from the small intestine. And there's some very characteristic features on the biopsies that will give us the diagnosis. So sometimes it takes a few different tests to be able to figure this out.
Now, this autoimmune disease does not have a cure. Is that correct?
So interestingly, I mean, this is an autoimmune condition. You're right. It is an autoimmune condition where the body creates this inflammation upon seeing this molecule called gluten. Gluten is this food molecule in our food that will create the reaction and cause the damage in the small intestine. So this gluten molecule actually creates inflammation and damage to the lining of the small intestine where it sloughs off the layers of cells that are responsible for absorption of nutrients. And that's why we start to see vitamin deficiencies like iron deficiency. And it is an autoimmune process. So the cure for this, and there actually is a cure, that means that if you do the right things, you can make it go away. And that is to eat gluten-free.
The nutrition.
So this is probably the single most diagnosis where really the treatment is diet. And so we, initially we have a lot of people who, when you make this diagnosis and you tell them, look, you just have to change your diet and everything's going to be okay, they ask, well, is there a medication for it? And we don't have a medicine for celiac, but we do have a great dietary intervention. So the nice thing about this is that as long as you can stay gluten-free, you can actually control the disease process where it won't continue. And although it is a relatively big change in the diet, as you can see, Dave has managed his diet for the last, 13 years, and actually has done very well. And he's grown to a normal height for him, and is very healthy and active and plays sports and is doing very well in college. So We know that with the right interventions that this can be taken care of really well and managed well. And I think a lot of the time when you first hear the diagnosis and you hear that you have to make such big changes in your life, it can be overwhelming. But I think this is a great, testament to the fact that this can be controlled and people can live very normal lives if they just get an idea of what they need to do. And it's important to work with a nutritionist, because I think a lot of the time you may feel a little bit lost in your journey on how to go gluten-free, and that's where Bala can be very helpful to us.
And like he said, now we have so many options. There's a lot of gluten-free options now compared to a few years ago when you first got diagnosed. And it's about going back to basics, right? Lots of fruits and vegetables, lean meats. And on occasion, you may have bread, and now you have the gluten-free option. There's gluten-free crackers. So you can feel normal again with all this variety of foods.
So Dave, when you were home, your mom really learned a lot about cooking gluten-free, and she was able to keep you away from a lot of the gluten-containing foods. But now you've gone off to college. So tell me a little bit about how you have handled college.
Yeah, so college in the beginning, it seemed like orientation going up there, it seemed like it was going to be rough managing it, because I was going to be eating like dorm food, but like essentially they actually had a system where they had little note cards that like signified what is and what wasn't gluten free.
Oh, that's nice.
So like, yeah, when they had they would have like stations to make food and whatnot. So like they'd have like a taco station, so you could get like all the vegetables and everything, and then they just give you a different tortilla, and then you're good to go. So yeah, it wasn't bad in college. To be honest, it was pretty easy because I just had a lot of like for breakfast I would have like omelets and like a smoothie, and then lunch would be like tacos, and then dinner would be like they had like another station with like Chinese food, and instead of like noodles, they would do rice for you or something like that. So there was always like a substitute for anything you couldn't eat. So it kind of just worked out.
It sounds like they're accommodating. Do you find that when you go to restaurants, are you able to make those accommodations as well? Have they been
Oh
helpful?
yeah, for most restaurants, it's pretty easy to now. In the beginning, no, not nearly as close, but now it's a breeze.
That's great.
Good. Excellent. And do you feel like, I know it's some hard changes over the years, but do you feel like it's been worthwhile? Do you feel like, you can go out and enjoy the things that you've always wanted to do, etc.?
Oh yeah. Honestly, like everything I eat for the most part normally would technically be gluten free. So like it hasn't been like a super big change for me, to be honest, because like it's everything else just subbing stuff in here and there. So I mean it works out, and yeah, going out is pretty convenient because there's at least like one spot that has something gluten free around you now. So it's not that bad.
Good. Excellent. Any advice to people who may be just figuring this out for themselves?
It's tough in the beginning, but it gets easier. Definitely does. Yeah, that's it.
Good. All right. Well, thanks, Dave. Thanks for coming on and sharing your story with us.
Yep. All right. Bye.
Okay, we'll talk later.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.